and making it a state law. So I think they'll be going to the legislature to initiate this. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the committee, and I'm excited for the city, and I think it's going to be a really good thing. The other night, and I'll just close with this. Um, it was Friday night. My sweetheart didn't get home till like 9:30, and of course we had to go have dinner somewhere. We didn't know where to go. Everything was closed. We ended up at a local restaurant on the west side that was still open, and there were TVs all around. And I was looking at the TVs thinking, soon the closed captioning will be um, available and people will be able to see that. And I think it's going to be great. So I'm really excited. And thank you guys for having me today. I really do appreciate it. And I hope everybody has a safe and happy summer. And I hope we get through COVID soon and we're all able to do our activities again. And I really hope that this ordinance helps our hearing impaired community.
Thank you, Counselor, very much. And thank you for sponsoring this bill, as well as Counselor Pena. So I just wanted to address something. I'm seeing that that the YouTube link for closed captioning doesn't appear to be functioning. That could be because the mayor might still be on a press conference, or we might have an issue. But I understand that the closed captioning is working on GovTV. So I apologize for that. Let me see, I just got a chat notification. All right. Oh, Tori, just our civil rights officer and the managing assistant city attorney, just posted a link in the chat, which will get you to the GovTV link for closed captioning. So I'll give everybody just a moment to get there. And perhaps, Jordan, if you wouldn't mind sending out an email with that link as well, I think that would be helpful. Okay. So I'm going to move on. And first talk a little bit about the ordinance. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just checking on the status of our closed captioning. So this is the ordinance. It was sponsored as ordinance 19-86 towards the end of the year, last year. So I believe it was in late November, and the mayor signed it, and so it has been enacted as ordinance 2019-35. It is in our code of ordinances, which is available free online, so you can always pull it there. It is, I believe, it's in the business and occupations section of the ordinances. So moving on just a little bit. And many of you were involved in the passage of this ordinance, but for those of you who might not have been, I wanted to just address sort of the overall view of it, and then I'm going to break this really long paragraph down into the elements of what will be required under the ordinance. So it requires an owner or manager of a public accommodation with a public-facing screen displaying streamed or televised programming in a public area during business hours through a receiver technically capable of displaying closed captioning to activate the closed captioning option. The ordinance also requires that the captions be displayed to the extent that your technology allows in the most, I believe, contrasted versions, so that folks with visual impairments can also see the closed captioning most easily. So this is the real sort of meat and potatoes of the ordinance. Up above here, there is a definition of public accommodation, and it really just gives an example of all the different types of public accommodations that exist, but it's not any different from what a public accommodation would be under our civil rights or our human rights ordinance as well. The addition here is a public area, and that's defined as any part of a place of a public, accommodation that is open to the general public. So we've all seen these, you know, you're sitting in your doctor's office and they have a television screen up that maybe is got soap operas on, or game shows, or might have some promotions for prescriptions or something to that effect. Also in bars and restaurants, as Councilor Borrego was indicating. And so here again, it talks about any person owning or managing the place of public accommodation. And then it goes into the specific types of closed captioning in order of preference. And it specifies it has to be during regular business hours and on televisions that are turned on and operating. So if a television is not turned on, of course, then closed captioning doesn't need to be displayed or on. There are a couple of exceptions to the ordinance. So an exception is if there is no receiver of any kind in this public area of a place of public accommodation. So basically that just means if you don't have a public facing screen in a public area, then you of course don't have to have closed captioning on. And this might mean that perhaps there are screens, say in the kitchen or something like that, and those would not have to have closed captioning turned on. Another exception is if the receiver that is bringing down either the television program or the streamed content does not allow for closed captioning. My understanding is that technology would likely be pretty old, but to the extent that that all the technological goblins have lined up, then you should be able to have it on. Now, this will also depend on the origin of the content. So for instance, Netflix now, I believe, does closed captioning for most programming. But depending on what the source of the streaming is, I believe that sometimes closed captioning may not be available there. So that is something that we would take into account in investigating a complaint. And then the third exception is, or sort of caveat is, you know, if you go into a Best Buy or another store that displays a lot of TVs, you only have to have one of those turned on with the closed captioning. But this is now this is just in places where they are on for sale. Under the ordinance, the way it is drafted, if there are multiple TVs that are all on, and they're facing, so like maybe you're in a sports bar and there are 3 college football games on or 3 college basketball games on, wouldn't be required at a private home. Um, this the public facing screen is not that language is not in the ordinance, but um, it is a sort of a common sense element because it needs to be facing the public. So I'm imagining sometimes there might be a screen just outside of, say, the server window, but it's facing in towards the kitchen. Um, and it needs to be displaying something. So it needs to be on, and it needs to be displaying either streamed or televised programming in a public area. So this goes with public facing, and that any member of the general public that's inside this place of public accommodation can see the television screen. This is only required during business hours. So say for instance, in a restaurant, if folks are there closing up shop, they don't have to have, they can turn it off maybe while they're watching music videos and mopping and sweeping and doing all of the stuff to close down a restaurant late at night. Once again, here it is, the receiver, and that can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. It can be a computer, it can be, our cable boxes, it can be Apple TV, or so there's, nowadays there are just so many ways to download live streaming of television or streaming that you have pulled up. Maybe it's a replay of a baseball game or a movie. And so if all of these things are in line, then the owner or the manager needs to make sure that the closed captioning has been activated. And on screens that are turned on and operating. So once again, if it's television that's off and nobody is watching it, then it doesn't need to have closed captioning on at that time. So the new piece that we are introducing today is how the Albuquerque closed captioning ordinance will be enforced. So once again, my colleague, Corey, who heads our Office of Civil Rights, and her colleague, Crystal Velarde, make up our awesome Office of Civil Rights. And they would be responsible for taking in complaints for violations of this ordinance, just as they would through with a violation under the Human Rights Ordinance. So you would call Tori's office. There's also an option online to file a complaint, and I believe they also accept them by email. And perhaps we can speak a little bit about that once we're through the presentation. And then they'll process the complaint just like they would a complaint under the Human Rights Ordinance. And I'll get into the details of that in just a moment. And then once they've processed the complaint, they make a recommendation to the Human Rights Board on how to proceed with the complaint. If the Human Rights Board finds probable cause that the ordinance has been violated, then the parties can engage in conciliation. I believe that is probably best option and where the city likes to go if we can, if at all possible, if the parties are agreeable. Now, if the Human Rights Board finds an actual violation, then the Human Rights Board can issue an order to stop. And so there is sort of like a cease and desist order. But if this order is violated, so say a restaurant is sort of deliberately not turning on closed captioning on let's say it's a sports bar, and their main, their sort of main uh, marketing effort is this huge television screen, and they play all of the big Sunday football games, especially as we're getting into playoffs. And say they just absolutely refuse to turn on the closed captioning. Um, a complaint is filed, it's processed by the Office of Civil Rights. The Human Rights Board finds that they have been a violation, and then um, they order them to stop violating the ordinance, but essentially that's an order to turn on the closed captioning option. At that point, if they still don't turn on closed captioning, the Office of Civil Rights and the Human Rights Board have the option of fining that entity. But in order to do so, we do have to go to court. So this is our illustrious Chief Administrative Officer signing the administrative instruction. It's number 825. That, if it's not already, should be shortly added to our code of ordinances as well. You'll see, and when you look online at the code of ordinances, towards the bottom, you can see the option to see the administrative instructions. So she signed this at the beginning of the month because we wanted to take this opportunity to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So quite exciting that we've got this up and running. So here is sort of the introduction of the administrative instruction. So if you got online, you can download a PDF of this. We also can send it to you. We have copies, of course. And it talks about that we are implementing enforcement of the Albuquerque closed captioning ordinance, that the Office of Civil Rights will be the responsible office for enforcement. It also does say, to the extent there are any conflicts with this, that the Human Rights Ordinance will control. To the extent that there's a conflict with state or federal law, of course, those would control, as we are just, we're a municipality. And at least in this area of law, they typically supersede our powers. If there is a complaint against a local government entity, then the appropriate Title II coordinator at that entity would be notified, and they would be, in that instance, they will be responsible for investigating any alleged violation. So that wouldn't be under Ms. Jacobus, under the Office of Civil Rights. I'm watching my text messages, and it just looks like YouTube closed captioning is not working. So I hope that you have been able to access the GovTV. And I believe YouTube is just a link of the GovTV closed captioning. Okay, so that's sort of the introduction. And then the next part of the administrative instruction really goes through step by step how the Office of Civil Rights would process a complaint, and they would do so just like they do any complaint under the Human Rights Ordinance. So a person who believes they have experienced or seen a violation has a limit of 90 days to let the Office of Civil Rights know about that. The Office of Civil Rights will interview the complainant. They can do that, well, largely now I believe we're probably doing it via telephone because we're all living remote lives. And then the Office of Civil Rights determines whether they should issue a complaint. So essentially, is there something there that that makes the Office of Civil Rights think that there may have been a violation. Now, at this point, the parties can decide to settle without any sort of finding of an actual violation. So again, we would hope that most complaints would settle here. I really don't expect many businesses to challenge this, but we shall see. Um, and I just from our experience in watching Tory enforce the human rights ordinance too, most of the time it is that folks are not aware of, sorry about that, of the particular ordinance. But just to let you know, we are meeting with the businesses next week to let them know that this is coming into effect, and there was also a press release issued today. Now, I diverged a little bit. I'm sorry about that. So, if the parties tried to settle, or they neither or one of them didn't want to and try to engage in settlement at this stage, then the Office of Civil Rights will do an investigation. And then the Office of Civil Rights, after the conclusion of the investigation, and they reach out to both parties. They sometimes do will visit a location, and they will provide a report to the Human Rights Board about their findings. And based on what they've been able to determine, make a recommendation again to the Human Rights Board about what should be done. At that point, the Human Rights Board can issue a decision based just on that report that the Office of Civil Rights has provided, or they can do some fact finding for themselves and have a hearing. Now, if at this point, if the Human Rights Board finds probable cause to believe the ordinance was violated, once again, we will strongly encourage the parties to settle. If it doesn't, the Human Rights Board can proceed to find a violation and order the entity to cease and desist their violation of the ordinance. Alternatively stated, turn on the closed captioning. And then, as I mentioned earlier, if we have a particularly recalcitrant business or entity, we can proceed to court. The Office of Civil Rights and the Human Rights Board can take that entity to court and fine them for each of the violations. So it has the potential to be quite meaningful to somebody's bottom line or operational budget. There is a lot that this ordinance will do for the deaf and hard of hearing community. But I think the two biggest things are being able to participate in the public environments that the rest of us do, or wish we were still participating in right now. But we'll get there again one of these days. But I think the most important reason why we wanted to get this up and running is that we are in quite strange times, and we are in the middle of a global pandemic, and currently we're in the midst of a spike all over the country. And so, to the extent that the governor comes on, or maybe the president will eventually order, issue a nationwide order for face masks, as Wall Street is recommending that he do. And, folks will need to know that right away. We can also imagine other emergency situations, fires, perhaps our water supply, just all sorts of things. And so to the extent that that hearing folks can hear the newscaster breaking into your current programming and letting us know about about the emergency, or perhaps that we should take shelter. Maybe not, I don't believe we get tornadoes here, but some other sort of flooding might happen. You will have the same information and be able uh, to make your plans at the same time, um, and have the same sort of information to work with as the hearing community. That is conclusion of the presentation. We'd love to take questions, and we can take those either verbally or on the chat option.
Okay, are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Steve Frazier. As you may recall, way back in January, I sent an op-ed to the Albuquerque Journal. And at the time that this ordinance was passed in December, the Channel 13 covered it as a news story. The best of my knowledge, those are the only two public announcements of the enactment of this legislation. Since it was passed, I have been to doctors' offices, I have been to restaurants, I've been to bars, I've been to other places. Nobody had the captions on, and quite honestly, when asked, they were not aware that there was an ordinance. So I'm asking again, what sort of publicity campaign the city is going to come up with to make businesses and the public aware of this ordinance. You certainly can't fine a business that has never been told that they must have those captions on. I had suggested in an email to one of the city offices that every licensed business in the city of Albuquerque, if they have an email address registered with the city, that they be sent a notice of this enactment. But I'd be curious as to what plans at this point have been made to publicize the ordinance.
Yes, thank you for that question. And, you know, COVID hit right when we were moving to publicize. And so it really got in the way, and businesses were closed down at that time as well. So, but as it became clear that this was going to go on, that COVID was going to go on, we recognized that we needed to get that information out. So the first step in terms of publication of notification was today. There was a press release that went out from the mayor's office regarding the closed captioning ordinance, and the today's meeting, as well as the meeting that we are planning with all of the various chambers of commerce next week. So we will be meeting with the businesses next week and having largely the same discussion we're having here about how to comply with the ordinance. Back in March, we had looked into doing something similar to what had occurred for when the plastic bag ordinance, and I can't remember what the official name of that ordinance was, but back when, and so we talked to them about how they did that. Sending an email, I think, is an easy option. I think we can look into that. In terms of when I spoke to Solid Waste about how they notify their businesses, I believe they sent they sent letters, but they have a database because they charge for their services, or, you know, waste collection. So they have a different database than we would. And also, we would have to find funding to send actual paper letters with postage. I think we're going to talk to the businesses next week and see what they think is most appropriate. I like the idea of sending out an email to the extent that we have current emails in our business registration database. I think I was told that about half of the businesses have an email address in there. So we can look into that. I think that's a great idea.
If I could make one additional suggestion, I see the local TV stations have been very cooperative in running public service commercials concerning COVID-19. And I'm wondering if the city couldn't develop a PSA that would publicize this law or this ordinance so that people, if there is a news breaking on the COVID-19, or the governor or somebody else is going to be speaking, so that they will have captions available if they're out in public someplace. It would seem that the two could be tied together somehow if the stations would consider running them.
Okay, I'm sorry. So I didn't quite. So you're asking for, so if the governor, say, was doing her COVID update, and I apologize, I don't understand all of the different steps in this. So, but what role would we play in that?
I'm suggesting that the city, a public service TV commercial or a TV announcement, they call them a PSA, public service announcement, that would alert people to the captioning ordinance as a way to keep the public informed about COVID-19. If the governor is having a press conference, of course it is captioned, or it's the attempt to caption it. Channel 13 had some problems with a couple of those, but they do attempt to caption those. But unless the captions are turned on, then deaf people and hard of hearing people are just going to see the governor talking and not have the vaguest notion of what she's talking about. If there's something else happening, if the president should unbelievably declare that masks are going to be required throughout the United States, people are simply going to see his face on the screen if there are no captions and they are deaf or severely hard of hearing. So again, I would think the two could be tied in somehow in a commercial public service announcement that the TV stations would run.
Okay, I'm understanding. I got confused about us trying to. Well, anyway, I totally am with you on the public service announcement. We have, so that is something that is a possibility as well. We'd have to look into it and see about budget and see how that works. I believe we film our own public service announcements, but that is actually the individual who helped us get a lot of this set up with closed captioning today. I would talk to him and approach him, but I can definitely explore that option and see if that's something we could do. And that would be, I agree, an easy way to let the businesses know. And I appreciate any other ideas that folks might have on how we might easily let the businesses know. And I also hope to provide. We will be providing, of course, the administrative instruction and ordinance to the businesses, and for the chambers, we will ask that they provide that they forward that out to their listservs as well. And I expect that they will might have more updated information than the city in terms of emails anyway. So we're planning on doing that as well. And of course, we'll encourage folks to forward it. Are there any other questions? Come on, I know somebody's got a question.
Winter, it's Council Borrego.
Yes, Counselor.
I was suggesting that we work also through the. I imagine you're already working with the chambers.
Yes, that's who we're meeting with next week.
That's great.
Yeah, yes, and we are meeting with them. That is on the 15th, right before another ADA series. So today, I believe at 2, Mr.
Some
Rob
other
will-
possible free outlets, KUNM and 89.1. I forget what they are.
KRWG maybe. Oh, KN and KN.
KR. I'm not sure what their acronym is, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes. Okay, I see a question that came in from Shirley Alexander, and her question is, who monitors whether or not businesses are complying with the ordinance? So we don't have really per se a team of investigators in the Office of Civil Rights. So this will largely be a complaint-based system. Of course, we hope to grow it sometime in the future and have investigators that will be able to go out and honestly monitor not only for this but for other ADA matters. We don't currently have that. We did, however, get our first ever Title II ADA coordinator, and that is quite an achievement for the city. So yes, you know, with the limited resources, and especially now because of budget and the pandemic, we will be relying on the public to let us know.
Winter, we have a question from someone in the chat. I received the message privately, but she would like to turn on her video. So if you're ready for that, we can tell her go right ahead.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Miss Karina.
Hi, everyone. I just have a question, and this may be a little bit dumb, but my question is about the airports. And I know those are federally regulated, but does the city of Albuquerque have any pull with closed captioning ordinances in the airports?
First of all, there are no dumb questions, is my belief. Second of all, that is a really good question. And so we actually had our aviation office there. So to the extent that we control screens, I think we can probably work on that. To the extent that the feds or TSA control the screens, we probably don't have a lot of control over that, but I think we could engage with in conversations with them because quite frankly, they have stronger laws that they are supposed to be complying with. So I'd be happy to reach out to our director of aviation and look into that and get back to you with an answer. If I could get your email address or the best way to get in touch with you, I can figure that out. And that sounds like it might take a little bit of legal research to see what the federal requirements are in an airport.
Thank you so much. And Jordan already has my email information, so I appreciate
Great.
your response.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
That was a great question.
I'm sorry, Winter, when I got cut off a minute ago, but I wanted to just mention also KUNM and KNW, maybe give us some free airtime.
Okay, great. We will look into that. Anybody else have any other questions? Are we sure? This is your chance. Of course, you can always reach out to me or Tori. We
Or
both sit in
Counselor
the,
Borrego.
yeah, or Counselor Borrego, or her office as well, Susan, her policy analyst. All right, well, if I would like, I'm going to put my contact information in the chat room. And let me type that out real quick.
Ms. Winter, we have somebody asking if they can get a copy of the PowerPoint. I'm happy to send that out.
Sure, and that is why I sent it to you. So go ahead, go ahead and send that out.
Yes, ma'am.
And then Tori, what is or Crystal, what number or email should they contact for complaints?
They can use civil rights at cabq.gov.
Okay. And is there is your phone's number forwarded still?
It is forwarded.
Okay, what is that? 768?
4544 is my direct line.
Okay.
Winter, I just want to thank everyone for helping to implement this new ordinance. And I hope it really helps with the hearing impaired community, and all of you for your work in assuring that we were legal and that we were able to implement it. So I just.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you for taking the time today to spend with us. If there are no further questions, I think we should go ahead and wrap up, because I know we need to prepare for Mr. Rob's upcoming presentation, which I'm also excited about. So I want to give everybody one last shot, though. If you have any questions, or if you are a little bashful, you can email me as well, and we will, if I don't know the answer, or if we don't know the answer right off, we will research it and get back to you. All right, thank you all for your support and understanding as we proceed with this ordinance and the administrative instruction. And thank you very much for your time.